Security expos feature companies like Megvii and its facial recognition technology. They show off cameras with AI that can track cars and identify individuals by face, or just by the way they walk.
The place is just filled with these screens where you can see the computers are actually reading people's faces and trying to digest that data and basically track and identify who each person is. And it's incredible to see so many, because just 2 or 3 years ago, we hardly saw that kind of thing. So a big part of it is government spending. And so the technology has really taken off, and a lot of companies have started to sort of glom onto this idea that this is the future.
China is on its way to building a total surveillance state.
And this is the test lab for the surveillance state. There have been reports of torture and deaths in the camps. And for Uyghurs on the outside, Xinjiang has already been described as an open-air prison.
Trying to have a normal life as a Uyghur is impossible both inside and outside of China. Just imagine, while you're on your way to work, police subject you to scan your ID, forcing you to lift your chin, while machines take your photo and you wait until you find out if you can go. Imagine police take your phone and run data scan and force you to install compulsory software, allowing your phone calls and messages to be monitored. Imagine at the
Nuri Turkal, a lawyer and a prominent Uyghur activist, addresses a demonstration in what...
It's effective, it's safe, it's tiny, as you can see, and it can be put in a healthcare worker's kit to give to the woman at the village level. So Sadie won't have to go 15 kilometers any longer to get that injection.
But the Gates were not content to stop there. In 2014, it was announced that Microchips Biotech Inc., a company in Lexington, Massachusetts, had developed a new form of birth control. A wireless implant that can be turned on and off with a remote control, and that is designed to last up to 16 years. According to MIT Technology Review, the idea originated when Bill Gates visited Robert Langer's MIT lab in 2012 and asked him if it would be possible to create an implantable birth control device that could be turned on or off remotely. Langer referred Gates to the controlled-release microchip technology he had invented and licensed to Microchips Biotechnology, and the Gates Foundation granted $20 million to the firm to develop the implants. Reducing population growth has, by Gates' own admission, been a core mission of the Gates Foundation since its inception. But in order to really understand what Gates means by population control, he then gives a specific example. We are working with a company in India called Kushi Baby, which creates off-grid digital health records. A necklace worn by infants contains a unique identification number on a short-range communication chip. Community health workers can scan the chip using a mobile phone, enabling them to update a child's digital record even in remote areas with little phone coverage. This sudden interest in digital identity was no mere passing fancy for the Vaccine Alliance. Gavi doubled down by becoming a founding member of the ID 2020 Alliance, a public-private partnership dedicated to spearheading
to help them with that. Else.
Although vaccines and identity may seem unrelated, Bill Gates has spent the last few years funding research that can bring the two ideas together. Late last year, Gates once again turned to Robert Langer and his MIT colleagues to investigate new ways to permanently store and record the vaccination information of each individual. The result of their research was a new vaccine delivery method. They found that by using dissolvable microneedles that deliver patterns of near-infrared light-emitting microparticles to the skin, they could create particle patterns in the skin of vaccine recipients which are invisible to the eye but can be imaged using modified smartphones. Rice University describes the quantum dot tags left behind by the microneedles as something like a barcode tattoo. So who was behind this development? As lead researcher Kevin McHugh explains, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation came to us and said, "Hey, we have a real problem, knowing who's vaccinated." So our idea was to put the record on the person. This way, later on, people can scan over the area to see what vaccines have been administered and give only the ones still needed. The microparticles that form the fluorescent quantum dot tags are delivered along with the vaccine, but they cannot be delivered by a traditional syringe. Instead, they must be delivered by a patch of microneedles made from a mixture of dissolvable sugar and a polymer called PVA, as well as the quantum dot dye in the vaccine. It should be no surprise, then, that big pharma vaccine manufacturers, in their scramble to produce the coronavirus vaccine that, Gates assures us, is necessary to go back to normal, have turned to a novel vaccine delivery method: a dissolvable microneedle array patch.
The University of Pittsburgh is where the polio vaccine was first discovered. At the medical center, researchers are now developing a vaccine that is delivered using a dissolvable patch called a microneedle array.
Think about them as almost like a Band-Aid. And so the microneedle array is simply applied to the skin topically, pressed into place very shortly, and then taken off and thrown away. And then the antigen is already delivered.
As is becoming evident, this new vaccine-delivered barcode-like tattoo is about much more than simply ensuring that children get all their Gavi-recommended immunizations. On a recent Ask Me Anything thread on Reddit, when asked, "What changes are we going to have to make to how businesses operate to maintain our economy while providing social distancing?" Bill Gates answered, "Eventually we will have some digital certificates to show who has recovered or been tested recently, or when we have a vaccine, who has received it." In his answer, Gates fails to mention that he has himself been instrumental in kickstarting and funding the research into the very type of digital certificates for vaccination that he is speaking about, or that these digital certificates, likely, at first, to be a digital marker linked to a biometric ID, could very well one day take the form of vaccine-implanted quantum dot tattoos. But, as in so many other aspects of the unfolding crisis, but this is not Gates's first experience with the field of biometric identity. A decade ago, the government of India began what has been called the largest social experiment on Earth, enrolling over 1 billion people in the largest biometric identification database ever constructed. The project, involving iris scanning and fingerprinting the entirety of the Indian population, recording their biometric details in a centralized database, and issuing them a 12-digit identity number that could be used to prove residence and access government services, all within the span of a few years, presented an incredible societal, legal, and technological challenge. It's no surprise, then, that the person who was brought in as the chief architect of the Aadhaar project when it was launched, Nandan Nilekani, co-founder of Indian multinational Infosys, also provides facial recognition systems for the Chinese government, and is currently developing digital driver's licenses for use in the United States. IDEMIA even created the Cushy Baby identification necklaces with embedded microchips that Gavi CEO Seth Berkley touted in his Nature article. Unsurprisingly, the company receives support from the Bill and Melinda Gates. In this formulation, being issued a government ID, having one's biometric details registered, tracked, and databased by the government, is a human right that must be secured. It should be no surprise by this point that this human right also has direct benefits for big business and for the entities that are looking to exert greater control over the human population. Gates provided insight into the real purpose of this identification control grid in a speech at the Financial Inclusion Forum hosted by the U.S. Treasury in 2015.
Every country really needs to look through these KYC, Know Your Customer rules to make sure that customers are able to prove who they are. But, of course, in many countries, you don't have any type of ID system. And the lack of an ID system is a problem, not just for the payment system, but also for voting and health and education and taxation. And so it's a wonderful thing to go in and create a broad identification system. Again, India is a very interesting example of this, where the Aadhaar system, which is a 12-digit identifier that's correlated to biometric measures, is becoming pervasive throughout the country and will be the foundation for how we bring this low-cost switch to every mobile phone user in India. The same type of thing is happening now in Pakistan, and there's early beginnings of creating these ID programs in Africa as well. Show up for any government service, say you walk into a primary health clinic, we'll be able to take that bio-ID very quickly and bring up your electronic health record. Even if you've moved from one part of the country to the other, you will be well tracked and well served without nearly as much paperwork or waiting. And so the ID system is foundational.
The vaccination drive ties into the biometric identity drive, which ties into the cashless society drive. In Gates's vision, everyone will receive the government-mandated vaccinations, and everyone will have their biometric details recorded in nationally administered, globally integrated digital IDs. These digital identities will be tied to all of our actions and transactions, and, if and when they are deemed illegal, they will simply be shut off by the government, or even the payment providers themselves.
This is one time. Forget the conspiracy. Listen to our government agencies here and tell the truth. Yeah, there's no conspiracy here, folks. Just get your damn vaccine.
It's over and over again for the truth to sink in. Catapult of propaganda.
One time. Forget the conspiracy. Listen to our government agencies here and tell the truth. Yeah, there's no conspiracy here, folks. Just get your damn vaccine.
It's over and over again for the truth to sink in. Catapult of propaganda. Catapult of propaganda.
Just get your damn vaccine.
The European Commission.
Zeit für mal wieder. Hast du mal mir sagen, sie soll den Chip machen, gell? Ciao.
Τον τελευταίο καιρό όμως, κάνει όλο και πιο συχνά την εμφάνισή της μία άλλη μέθοδος πληρωμής, για την οποία ο πελάτης χρησιμοποιεί κάτι που μπορεί να έχει πάντα πρόχειρο, το χέρι του.
Η Λέσχη Μπίλντεμπεργκ είναι αυτό που λέμε think tank, δηλαδή είναι ένα φόρουμ.
Πάει το μυαλό σας σε συνωμοσίες, γιατί σε αυτόν τον τόπο φαντασία...
Κοιτάξτε, όταν κάποιοι...
Και μακριά κάθε σκέψη περί συνωμοσίας.
Το ερώτημα είναι, κυρία Διαμαντοπούλου, τι λένε, τι δημιουργεί, τι φοβερό λένε. Πραγματικά, νομίζω είναι πολύ γαργαλιστικό για τη φαντασία του. Κάθε απλό πολίτη που βλέπει τέτοιους ανθρώπους να συμμετέχουν σε μία σύσκεψη και δεν δημοσιοποιείται το τι λένε.
Δεν πάει το μυαλό σας σε συνωμοσίες, γιατί...
have been yelling, oh, the UN's going to take over global security. They've been crazy, but now they're right.
Όταν κάποιοι από τους πιο ισχυρούς ανθρώπους του κόσμου συγκεντρώνονται κάπου και συζητάνε τόσο σημαντικά πράγματα, είναι λίγο
πολλά σε όλο τον κόσμο.
I want to ask, the question that I want to ask, that we're all going to ask is, who are you? I've never heard of you. Nobody in Europe had ever heard of you. The show here has lost its power. That's free.
The sacrifice is made in front of a 40-foot stone owl.
Been there for the ceremony with the cremation of care? Frankly, I don't think that's something I need to talk to you about. I should? Yes. Yeah, and it has no trespassing signs there too, doesn't it?
No, they put those after.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, sir. I've been there before.
Current members include former President George Herbert Walker Bush and his son.
You're both in skull and bones, the secret society. It's so secret we can't talk about it. Σήμερα, μέσα στις πολιτικές ώρες του κόσμου, παντού και οι Ευρωπαϊκές γραμμές διαδοχές, παντού και πάντα, ποιος έργατε, παντού και πάντα τις πληθυσμές, έκλεισες τους προσώπους της εκκλησίας, τους παράγοντες, αν το θέλετε, είναι
that this war is real, but the media can convince everybody it's real. I mean, you know, it's just that you keep talking about things, you keep saying it over and over and over again, and eventually people believe it. You know.
Η Λέσχη Bilderberg είναι αυτό που λέμε think tank, δηλαδή είναι ένα φόρουμ το οποίο δεν έχει σταθερή σύνθεση, συνεδριάζει κάθε χρόνο σε διαφορετική πόλη, οργανώνεται από μια ομάδα διακεκριμένων πολιτικών οι οποίοι αλλάζουν συνεχώς και ξεκίνησε υπό την εποπτεία της βασίλισσας της Ολλανδίας πριν από πάρα πολλά χρόνια. Η σύνθεσή του είναι 120 άτομα, 120 προσωπικότητες από όλο τον κόσμο. Το 1 τρίτο είναι πολιτική.
Βλέπετε τους ανθρώπους να συμμετέχουν σε μία σύσκεψη και δεν δημοσιοποιείτε το τι λένε.
Όχι, δημοσιοποιείται πρώτα όλη η ατζέντα. Φέτος τα ζητήματα, σε αυτή που συμμετείχα εγώ φέτος, τα θέματα ήταν, συνολικά ήταν γύρω στις 20 ενότητες. Από αυτές οι 5 αφορούσαν το κλίμα και τις κλιματικές αλλαγές, με πολύ μεγάλα ονόματα στον χώρο του περιβάλλοντος που έδειχναν τις δυνατότητες σχέσεις ανάπτυξης οικονομίας και περιβάλλοντος.
We need global governance, global financial governance, and we need it fast.
Where everybody has an RFID chip implanted in them, all money is to be in those chips, right? There'll be no more cash.
Των προεκλογικών εκστρατιών που είναι πολύ ενδιαφέρον και πώς μπαίνει το YouTube στη ζωή μας. Ήταν πραγματικά πολύ ενδιαφέρον ότι παρουσιάστηκαν οι εκστρατείες. Τότε ήταν σε εξέλιξη της Σεκολέρου Αγιάλ, του Σαρκοζή, της Χίλτον κλπ. Είναι γενικά μια διαδικασία που κάθε χρόνο βρίσκονται άνθρωποι και υπάρχει μετά ένα βιβλιαράκι το οποίο δημοσιεύει τα πρακτικά των συζητήσεων, χωρίς όμως να λέμε ποιος είπε τι, για να υπάρχει μια δυνατότητα έκφρασης ελεύθερης.
Πάει το μυαλό σας σε συνωμοσίες, γιατί σε αυτόν τον τόπο η φαντασία...
Κοιτάξτε, όταν κάποιοι από τους πιο ισχυρούς ανθρώπους του κόσμου συγκεντρώνονται κάπου...
This is one time. Forget the conspiracy. Listen to our government agencies. These guys are telling the truth. You know, there's no conspiracy here, folks. Just get your damn vaccine.
I'm concerned about the vaccine I do about the swine. Catapult the propaganda. Gotta catapult the propaganda. Gotta catapult the propaganda. Gotta catapult the propaganda.